Rev up your engine. Well, if you ever wanted a Lotus, this guy bought a used one. It's a Lotus Elise. Now, Lotuses were basically the original handling car. They're made for handling. You can see it's kind of like a gigantic, stylish go-kart. They're made to handle the curves. They're not excessive horsepower, but they have a unique look. This is the Elise. He paid $30,000 for it used. It's a two-seater. There's nobody in the back. And I'm having a hard time getting in. Whip, now I'm in. As you can see, basically it's a little race car. That's what it's made for. Speed, cornering. Now, it does have AC, but as the owner explained, it'll blow cold when he's going on a highway 60 miles an hour, but when he's just idling, it doesn't do much of anything. At the Jensen, they don't have accoutrements like this. Look, it looks like a race car. It is set up for racing around. Now, he redid the top a year and a half ago, and it has electric windows. As you can see, they work perfectly fine. Now, Lotuses have always been for people who are serious about driving cars. They're not dragsters. In the 60s, people would say, oh, I got a Mustang, I'll blow you off the road. A Mustang couldn't keep up with this thing in any kind of a curvy race. This is a handling car. It's not a straight line drag car at all. But they're really never going to make them again. The Chinese company Geely bought them out. And I guess they're going to make a few 300, 120, who knows, $1.3 million up super electric sports cars that have 2,000 horsepower. But the main reason Geely, the Chinese company, bought them was this. Guess what? They're going to make SUV Lotuses like everybody else. Porsche's making SUVs. Well, they're going to make SUVs. And of course, they'll probably have absolutely nothing to do with the original Lotuses because guess what? They're also going to be made in China. They're not made in England anymore. Now we'll get into the engine part of it. You might notice something familiar. Well, what's in my Toyota Matrix? A 1.8 liter engine. That's very similar, because guess what? Toyota makes the engines, Lotus modifies it. It puts out 50 horsepower more than mine does, because it's a souped up engine. Now, the last year they're making them, the sports cars that have gasoline engines, they say they're going to be completely electric in the future. And they're always bankrupt, the company. GM used to own them, they got rid of them. Other people own them, they got rid of them. Now the Chinese own them. They just want to make electric cars. So they're just finishing off a few in England. Then they'll be all electric cars made in China. They'll have the name. The Chinese basically paid for the name. Now, they're a lot of fun to drive around because of their design. They've got a mid-engine design. It has almost the perfect power to weight, but at the same time, it's classic. Standard transmission, and it's rear-wheel drive. And it's got 16-inch wheels in the front and 17 in the back. Now, for a serious driver, these things are fun. Not all-wheel drive, blah, blah, blah. A nice, powerful engine over the wheels with a standard transmission. These are like the original drift cars, only they're actually a lot more fun than a drift car because they're not losing control like those things do. This thing was made to handle the corners, not to oversteer and slide all over the place. They're better than that. Drifting is show-off type driving. Think about it. If you're drifting, what are you doing? You're basically taking your car to control. These are souped up little go-karts. The English have been making them for a long time with a lot of different engines in them. They're an awful lot of fun. Now, people always say, oh, English cars, endless money pits. But he bought it with 40,000 miles, and 30,000 miles later, didn't have to put any money into it. He put cosmetic stuff, radar detector and stuff. But realize, this is basically a Toyota engine. It is extremely dependable. He's changed the spark plugs, the wires, and he's changed the oil. They are basically Toyotas in disguise. But, I mean, it's got to be the most beautiful Toyota, you know? I got to say that. All the new Toyota sports cars, hey, they're not Toyota cars anyway. One is a Subaru, the other is a BMW Roadster. This is a Lotus. They designed the car. They design a lot of the stuff. Like I say, the new ones are going to be made in China, electric cars. They're just taking the name. But these older ones, especially the later older ones, they're not really troublesome. Now, back in my day, in the 60s and 70s, you're talking about money pits if you bought one of these things. I had a neighbor in Houston. He had 3 of them because he wanted to drive one. So he bought 3 of them, figuring one of them will be running most of the time while he's fixing the other 2. These are not that way. They're relatively dependable. The Toyota engine, like I said, they're not dragsters, but they're a riot to drive around. Now, here's his bone stock. It's 190 horsepower. Today, people like 190 horsepower. But get in a go-kart with a 5 horsepower engine. It can go really fast. Well, this is a go-kart with a 190 horsepower engine. It goes plenty fast enough. Plus, if you drive it on a highway, you can get around 30 miles a gallon, 29, 30 miles a gallon. You get decent gas much. But realize one thing, they're a driver's car. I can barely climb into this thing. They're not comfortable cars by any stretch of the imagination. You're not going to be cruising around in one of these things. They're not made for that. For example, his other car is a motorcycle. So he likes driving fast. And again, they don't ride all that great. They don't ride like a car at all. They're fun. You get a lot of power to weight. And when he needs one, his girlfriend has a car. Most people that are older than him, they'll have this. They'll have 2 or 3 other cars that are the regular cars, and this is their toy car that they have a lot of fun with. Now realize this thing weighs less than 1 ton. Maybe it's only 50 pounds less than 1 ton, but it's less than 1 ton. I've worked on vehicles that weigh 3, 4 tons. You get a lightweight, the handling of these things is phenomenal, as you're gonna see. And of course, it's got the racing wiper blade. There's only one, cover the whole thing. So let's take it for a spin. Now it's got a nice sound. It's not overbearing either. It's got a really nice sound with the windows down, but it handles like a dream. Now this is a stock exhaust, but it's a Sage 2, so it's louder. As you can see, it handles. Coming to our little drag strip in the sky here, and we're going to see what this thing can do with this little bitty engine. Here we go. As you noticed, you could really feel it when the variable valve timing kicked in. When he got it up there, it started to kick in, and it just took off. It's a little bitty race car. Now this car is really interesting because you can adjust the suspension inside for the front and the back inside without having to get out of the car. So if you don't mind climbing out and in your car, and you want to have a lot of fun, realize these Lotuses with Toyota engines aren't like the old ones. They aren't endless money pits. Far from it. He's owned this thing for 3 years. He could easily sell it for 10 grand more than what he paid for it. Easy. They're holding their values because they're not making them anymore. And it's not like an old English sports car that people say, sheesh, you're just going to be fixing it every 10 minutes. Pieces are going to fall off when you're going down the road. They aren't. You see how he drives. He drives like a maniac. And all he's putting is spark plugs and wires on it. The Toyota engines, they're in a perfectly designed frame and suspension system that you can adjust yourself. If you've got the money to buy one, you bought it for 30, you're really not going to lose money as long as you insure it in case it's stolen or wrecked. These Lotuses aren't show sports cars. They're real little sports cars. You can have a lot of fun, and unlike most things English, with the Toyota engines, they don't fall apart and cost a fortune to fix. And of course they hold their value since the Chinese company at the bottom is only going to be making, guess what? Electric SUVs in the future. I guarantee you the value of these things is only going to go up and up as time goes on. It would not be a bad investment if you ever wanted a fun toy like this and you're going to drive it once in a while for a toy. You can have a lot of fun. You get tired of it, you'll probably make money on the deal. But if you do buy one of these, heed my warning. Stay away from speed bumps. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Juan says, I got an O2 on the Civic. The radio and the AC work intermittently. Every once in a while they don't work. Then you turn the car off and on, and then it works and blows okay. And then sometimes the AC and the radio doesn't work. I can just about tell you what's wrong because I've seen it a million times. Hondas, as they age, often have weak, the old ones at least, often have weak ignition switches, the electronic part. That sends power to the compressor and also sends power to the radio. Replace the electrical portion of your ignition switch. You can do it yourself. It just screws on the bottom, and then all the wires have different plugs. They plug out and in. You can't put it in wrong. The plugs only plug in one way. And often what happens is when you're running the car, that switch sends power to various things, and the part that sends power to the AC and the radio is probably starting to short out. I see that all the time on Hondas. The electrical portion of your ignition switch. Replace that, and that should fix the whole thing. It's a pretty easy job. Anybody can do it with the screwdriver. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.